If you haven't seen the video yet, I strongly recommend you go on Kickstarter, watch the full video, learn what it does from a customer perspective. And tonight, as this is our Pebble developer meetup, we'll spend a little more time talking about what the new Pebble Watch, Pebble Time means for developers and how you can use it with your apps, how it's going to work with existing apps, and what kind of new apps you'll be able to write on this watch. So we're not going to go as technical as we usually do here because I know that many of you just want to touch the watch. So we want to keep as much time as possible for that. And Eric is here tonight, the CEO and founder of Pebble, and so we're going to give you a quick introduction to the API, and then we'll answer as many questions as possible from you guys here on stage. And when we're done answering questions, we'd love to give some space on the stage for you to show your projects. And maybe because this week is a little special, the SDK was just released this morning. We know you're all awesome, but we don't expect to see a full, complete project yet. But just maybe spending 30 seconds in a flash talk to tell us how you think you're going to use Pebble Time. And that would be a great way to use our lightning talks time today. And then we have plenty of time to stick around, drink a few more beers, or drink Coke, or eat ice cream, and answer even more questions and give you time to actually see Pebble Time on our wrist. A little service announcement, the ice cream truck closes at 8:30, so you will need to arrange for that. Sorry?
I'm just trying to Wi-Fi.
Just put in your email address.
Already that.
Okay, so the big news of the day is that we announced the SDK that supports Pebble Time. The SDK is available on developer.getpebble.com. It's our main developer website. So absolutely no changes here. I know a lot of you, like us, love to use Cloud Pebble as your main development environment. So cloudpebble.net has also been updated. The documentation, the examples, and the SDK also support Pebble Time. But I don't have a Pebble Time. Yes, you don't yet, but we have emulators available on Cloud Pebble and on the SDK that you can install on your computer that support Pebble Time and that also support the current Pebble. So let's go quickly through the main feature of the new SDK. The first very important point that we want to make tonight is that all the existing apps for Pebble will work for Pebble Time. They already work on Pebble Time. If you want to see your app on a watch, you just need to ask us and we'll load it. Of course, it will be in black and white. We're not going to automatically colorize your apps. That would have been a fun project too. But all the existing apps are compatible with Pebble Time. You don't need to do anything. If you don't touch your app in the Pebble App Store, it will still be on the Pebble App Store when Pebble Time comes out and developers will be able to install it. We're introducing a new concept with Pebble Time, which is the concept of platforms in the SDK, and so this is going to give me a chance to tell you a little bit about Canadian minerals. So we had to come up with names for our platforms, and so we thought about a lot of different names. We considered using fruit names, and so we would have had a define in the SDK that would have been PBL_platform_Apple. And then we thought maybe we should call it PBL_platform_Apple Watch. That was really amazing. Then we realized that maybe we could do better. And so the best way to remember our code name are that Pebble is a type of rock. And so we looked at the Wikipedia page for types of rocks. And we went from top to bottom. And so the existing Pebble and Pebble Still that you have on your wrist are now called the platform Aplite, and the new watch Pebble Time is the platform Basalt. So what are the differences between those two platforms? Aplite has a black and white display. It's 144 by 168 pixel, just 1 bit, so it's on or it's off. While Basalt, of course, as you know from the Kickstarter video, has a color e-paper display. This display, just like the previous one, but even a little better, has a very good refresh rate, so we can do animations up to 30 FPS. That was one of the really strong requirement from our product team. And we can deliver 64 colors on that display. So I got a lot of questions already about the colors. It's 64 colors. There's no palette, so you cannot change the list of colors available at a given time. So we'll show you what are the 64 colors that you can use. The CPU is a little bit faster on Pebble time than it was on Pebble. You get 100 megahertz instead of 64 megahertz. But more important, we switch from a Cortex M4 to a Cortex M3. If you're into that kind of details, I'll be happy to answer more questions later. The RAM for apps, which is one of the main limitations when you're developing on Pebble, went from 24 kilobytes to 64 kilobytes. So if you're writing apps and you need to store full images, you can do it with the extension of memory, even though those images are in color, of course. In terms of sensors, we keep the compass and the accelerometer that we had before. They work exactly the same way, so you shouldn't need to recalibrate any of your algorithm. And we add smart straps, which is a connector on the back of Pebble, which allows your Pebble to talk via a serial bus to accessories that are on the band. This is also something that we can answer questions about tonight, but the documentation has not been published yet for smart straps. That's for the platform. So now, the other important point is that all the new apps that you're going to build with this new SDK, SDK 3.0, those apps will work with Pebble Time, and also with Pebble Still, of course. So how do we do that? We encourage you to keep one source code, resources, so C file, PNG images, your appinfo.json, which make your Pebble source code today. Take it through the Pebble build tool, which is the same tool that you know and love. And this tool will produce one PBW package, just like we do today. The novelty is that in this package, we're adding a binary file and a resource file that is dedicated for the Basalt platform. And what that means is that when we're storing your images, we're only going to store the black and white version for the black and white watch, the color version for the color watch, and when we load them on the watch, we will only load what the watch needs. So you can add color support to your existing apps, and you won't make them larger for older watch. So that's the gist of it. I hope this little schematic makes it extremely clear. But if you have any question about that, of course, I'll be happy to answer that. The first question that you may want to ask is, what if I don't want to support the black and white watch? Maybe you have a great idea, you want to display fractals on Pebble. Doesn't really make sense to do it in black and white. And so in the appinfo.json, you have a target platforms field, and I actually made a mistake here. There's an S on platforms. And you can choose what platforms you want to support. By default, we will support both Aplite and Basalt, but you can decide to remove one of them and only support Basalt. In your source code, you can use defines to add compile time behave differently depending on what platforms you're building from. So ifdef pbl underscore color is the shortest form, but you can also do ifdef pbl underscore platform underscore basalt. Colors. Wonderful colors. So we have new stickers with that little palette. You should make sure you get one before you leave. We have 64 colors, and all our colors have a name. My favorite is Jaeger Green, and later tonight we can tell you how we came up with that name. This tool is part of the new SDK portal. You can click on any of the color, get the hexadecimal code, the name of the color in the SDK, and very easily just copy paste a little code sample if you want to use that as the background color for a window. You use G-color Jaeger Green just like you did G-color black before, so when you're setting the background color of a window, the API did not change. The emulator, as I said, is included in Cloud Pebble. It's also included in the command line SDK, so that's something new. It was not included in the command line SDK before, and using it is extremely simple. We made a little video. So you're just going to use Pebble build to build your project like you did before, and Pebble install -- emulator, the name of the platform you want to emulate. The emulator will boot, load the app, and show it on the screen. So if you haven't tried it yet, I highly encourage you to try it. If you're using Cloud Pebble, absolutely nothing to install on your computer. The emulator is part of the Cloud Pebble window. If you're on your computer, you just download the tar.gz package, install the dependencies, and you can get that on your desktop. It's really a great way to work until you get the actual watch. PNG and APNG support. Very important one. It's really nice to have more images, to have a color screen, sorry. But the biggest problem with the color screen is that the images are larger. So to make it easier for you to manage those images without exploding the memory of the watch, we're adding in the system PNG support. It was available as third-party library before. And also APNG support. So those two examples are actually animated. Thank you, Keynote. And you can get them on the SDK website with the source code, and very easily display PNG animations, which on top of which you can add the time, for example, to do a watch face that displays the time with an animation in the background. If you look at the watch faces we have tonight, we have several that are actually built this way. We just took a really nice and funny animation and put them as the background of the watch. I want to take a few minutes to talk about the timeline. How many of you have heard of the timeline? Many of you are excited about the timeline. Yeah. The timeline is a really, really cool concept that we're adding in Pebble Time. The idea of the timeline is that at the center of your watch is the present. At the center of the watch is your watch face that you have selected as your default watch face. And when you press the up button, you go back in the past and you see what's happening, what just happened in the past. And when you press down, you see what's coming up in the future. Very useful if you want to know where is my next meeting, where am I going to, what time is the next meeting. But we want to take it much further than just calendar events. And that's where apps get into play. We want apps to inject information into that timeline, and to do that we're adding new APIs that we're calling the Timeline APIs that will let you developers inject information such as score for the current games, reservation for a restaurant, and weather information, for example. So all of those can be injected in the timeline directly from your apps, and I'm going to explain to you how to do that. This beautiful diagram represents 3 essential components. I'm very sorry about that mic, I think I'm hurting your ears now. The first part is the Pebble, the second part is the mobile phone, and the third part is the cloud up there. On your Pebble, the pins are represented directly on the timeline, and they're synchronized from the phone. So when I say synchronized, the pins will be saved and on the watch for at least the next 24 hours. So even if the user walks away and loses connection with the phone, the pins that are on the timeline will be stored and will still be available. On the phone, your app in its PebbleKit JavaScript file, the JS file that you include in your app, can request to subscribe the user to the timeline in 2 different ways. The first way is to say, I want to subscribe to the topic soccer or weather San Francisco. And the second way is to call your own server in the cloud and to say, this is a user ID and I want you to send information to this user ID. So we have an API to get the user token, and we have an API to just subscribe to a topic. Once you have done this subscription phase, you can, from the cloud, use our web API to push information to the timeline. And again, you can push to an individual user with the timeline token, or you can push to a set of users who are subscribed to a specific topic by just specifying the topic. The actual push is a JSON object that describes the pin to display on the timeline. It will contain information such as the title of the event, what icon to use when displaying this event, what layout to use to display this event. And once you've pushed it to the cloud, it's synchronized to the mobile apps and then synchronized to the timeline. So that means that without your app ever running on the watch, you're not running in the background. You can push information to the user in real time, all week long, for several months, and the user will always get the information even if they're not running your app. It's a very scalable system because many apps can run at the same time, and because we're using web technology, we can very easily handle pretty large volume of pins and notifications. And we've tested it very heavily, and we'll be very happy to open it to you and also see what crazy use cases you're going to come up with. But don't be afraid of pushing millions of pins. It's designed to do that. So, no, seriously. We can't wait. So, we have published today on the developer website the documentation for those APIs. If you're interested in the timeline and you think you have information that is pertinent to the timeline, take a look at that documentation. The API endpoints are not available yet, so you cannot yet see your pin in the Pebble, but we'll make those API endpoints available later, and the pins will actually synchronize with the emulator, so you'll be able to test the timeline before you get a real Pebble time. So you'll have plenty of time to test it and make sure it works before users get their Pebble time. So we've covered the main concept that we've introduced today. The first one is the fact that we have those two platform names, Aplite, Basalt. Remember that you can decide to build for both of them. It's the default, or just build for one of them. We have this new SDK that is compatible with all the Pebbles out there. Support for colors, the 64 colors. The color picker is an amazing tool, really. Go check it out on the developer website. The emulator, very important if you want to start developing today, and you should. PNG and APNG support, and the timeline. I think it's time to get excited. How many of you have seen the Kickstarter video?
Show it.
How many of you have not seen the Kickstarter video?
We want to see it again. Show it.
We're going to show you again the Kickstarter video, and we're going to ask Eric to move to the front row so we can answer questions as soon as the video is over.
Yeah, like on the Kong commercial?
These are what people that ask questions that are in the video.
I get that. It reminds me of the Honda Kong commercial.
Oh, you don't have to make it.
Where they did the big group for the
Well, I don't want to
do it in one thing.
Hey Kickstarter, my name is Eric. I'm the founder of Pebble. You may remember Pebble from our first campaign, when a bunch of you supported our quest to build the world's
This is
first
nearly the
video
same
smart
thing. He's got 6 of them.
in different colors. Backers, users, and
Will you turn the
in
volume?
over 150 countries. We've jump-started an entire industry. It helped a small group of us build a watch that's widely regarded as the best in the world. That's why we're back on Kickstarter. So you, early supporters, can be the first to build our next generation smartwatch. And this is Pebble Time.
Is your volume up on your laptop?
Starting with a brand new color paper display. We worked hard to make Pebble fantastic. It's also much thinner, with an ergonomic design that comfortably fits the curves and wrists. Like the original Pebble, the display is always on and readable even in the brightest of sunlight. It's durable, but lightweight and water resistant. Pebble Time conveniently delivers messages and notifications to your wrist. In partnerships with some of the world's most popular apps, Pebble makes a great sports watch. It works great with iPhone, Samsung, and Android. We also have the tracker, so you can send voice with or take notes.
It was just really nice.
And of course, battery lasts for a full week. While designing Pebble Time, we followed our core belief. A smartwatch should help simplify life. It should turn out this smart for distracting you. To create more useful, you can use smart
Like, lose how? This thing's freaking hacked.
Luckily, the answer is right up the street. It turns out the best interface for any branch is time. That's why we've developed a new system called Timeline. It organizes useful information on your tasks.
But this kind of provides a little bit of information anyway.
See what's coming up next.
Nobody came here did not want to see this again. But the people who aren't super excited to find something else to do. Like, get ice cream. Hey, there's a good idea. I'm gonna get ice cream.
Scroll back in time to see that email you asked for. Your step count for the day, or the score for the game last night. So now, instead of opening an app just to see what's on your back, or to check the market, you can reliably get details you need at a glance. Hold on a second. Hey Mom, we're filming right now? I'll call you back in a bit. Crap you. Apps and developers will be able to insert payments into your timeline if you want. We're also working to bring timeline to the visual Pebble and Pebble Steel as well. We believe timeline is how you interact with wearables in the future to do things like keep tabs on the sports that you like, or remind you of events you care about, without taking your permission, all while helping you get things done. Remember to call Mom back. We started Pebble to create technology that blends seamlessly into your life. Because of you, that dream has become a reality. Now we're back on Kickstarter to work directly with you, the community that got us here. Unlike our first project, Pebble Time is nearly complete. The only thing missing is your support. Join us and help shape the future of wearable. Pebble was the first step. Help us do it again. It's time.
So we'd like to take any questions about Pebble Time or about the new development environment. We'll answer everything that we can answer without revealing secrets that we're keeping for future Kickstarter updates.
There's a mute, unmute on the top.
There we go. That sounds infinitely better than it was. Sure. No.
You're good.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, if you hold it at your face.
Any question? Yeah, I'll repeat the question.
Could you go into further about the support of the microphone? Like, does it talk to Siri or OK Google, or does it just strictly stay on the watch? About like natural language processing, is that involved at all? How does that work?
So the question is, can you give us more detail about how the microphone works? How is the conversion into text going to work, and what kind of processing of the text is going to be done? Are you going to use NLP, transfer it to Siri, or what? That's the question. Eric, you want to take this?
It's pretty simple. Just so when we decided to put a microphone in Pebble Time, we had done this with clear visibility into what other wearables had tried it out. I won't tell on anyone. It's really interesting because for us it was a chance to actually just try out another product and see what it, how they imagine wearables. The microphone support on Android Wear, they kind of veered a little bit too much towards the let's do everything under the sun with a microphone. It sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, and that kind of made it super annoying because it wasn't something that you could rely upon. It wasn't something that you can trust to work consistently. And when we decided to put a mic in Pebble, we had looked at a lot of different options. We had looked at what it would be like to have a touchscreen with a little keyboard that you could type into. We had looked at gestures. And we knew that there needed to be some way that we could inject information into the watch so that you could do more with your Pebble. Pebble was a great notification device, great at vibrating and displaying notifications, but it was difficult to actually take action upon them. So the microphone for us is the first way that you can really inject information into Pebble and take action during the day, or like accomplish things during the day. Responding to notifications is kind of the first thing that we're doing, and we're planning to do it really, really well. We want to build something that's reliable, something that you can trust to work. That's why we've added a couple twists to the system. So we'll just answer your question without going off on a ridiculously long tangent, like I already did. No, it does not inject information into Siri or Google Now. Yes, it does use a cloud-based speech-to-text recognizer. So the processing that happens while connected to the internet, but generally while you're receiving notifications, we kind of assume that you at least at some point will have a connection to the internet. The first use case is simply you've got an email, it comes in, you click a couple buttons, and you can speak into the watch, translate voice to text, display the result of that translation on the watch. If it looks good, press a button, it sends it off. If it doesn't, here's where we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of just failing as soon as the voice translation returns a poor result, we've decided to enable the opportunity for you to just send a voice note as a response. So this helps a lot with those situations where there's wind, or there's cars, or there's traffic, or annoying coworkers in the background, and you just can't get that voice to text to work. And so this is the case. In this case, you could just send a quick voice note. And again, I think that's the beginning. This is just what we're doing at launch. We've got a lot of ideas, and I think you've got a lot of ideas as well. I don't know of any wearable platform right now that has kind of open access to the microphone. We're planning to do that. It might not be available right at launch, but it's part of our roadmap. I'm excited. I think that having a microphone on your wrist that can be accessed and injected into web services or random things will be an opportunity to add like another layer of voice control or control in any regard to the Internet of Things, to other systems in your life, your phone. I don't know. What do you guys think? It's kind of going to be a bit of an adventure. That sufficiently answered it in a long roundabout way. Back then?
Yeah, so I'm kind of new to Pebble, but I'm wondering,
Welcome.
Can you have apps running in the background, and can they inject things in the timeline without access to the cloud?
So, good question. Two questions. Can apps run in the background? Can apps inject information to the timeline without the cloud? Yes, apps can run in the background. In particular, we built a system that's great for timer apps, apps that need to keep time, and those that need access to the accelerometer. This is best for fitness tracking apps like sleep trackers, activity trackers, step trackers. What app are you thinking about? Are you thinking about a particular app that needs to run in the background?
Yeah, kind of an accelerometer gesture detector that can like bring up something on the screen when you do that gesture.
Interesting. What's the refresh rate that we can do in the background?
So in the background you have full access to the accelerometer, so you can get up to 100 samples per second, and you can batch them, and your app in the background can wake up your app in the foreground. So the way it works is that in your binary, the schematic I showed earlier was actually a little simplified, because you have a bin file, a process file for your foreground worker, and you can have one for your background worker too. And the background worker can wake up the foreground worker, so you can do that. Yeah.
Second question was timeline for...
Oh yeah, and your second question was, can you inject things in the timeline? At the moment, you can only inject things in the timeline from the web. So if your app is in the foreground on the watch, you can make HTTP request and add things to the timeline. If your app is in the background, currently it cannot push things to the timeline. Yeah?
You mentioned the strap interface. That's
Yeah.
electrical. You're talking the electrical and the mechanical. And then...
So the smart strap interface. This is something that's completely new with Pebble Time. It's, I think, part of our long-term. It's related to our long-term vision for where we think wearables are headed. At the beginning, when we started working on this, 7 years ago, The idea was simply as an accessory to your phone, something that would show notifications when your phone was in your pocket or charging or something like that. When we launched the SDK for our first watch, Impulse, back in 2011, we were floored by the amount of developers that were interested in hacking on the software of the watch. Then in 2012, when we launched on Kickstarter, we had rebuilt our operating system for Pebble around the idea of developers writing software that would run on the app, on the watch as well. But that left hardware developers out of the mix. There was no exposed connectors on Pebble. It was very waterproofed and solidly glued together so that people couldn't really get in. But we saw an opportunity when a lot of new sensors started to hit the market. Over the last couple of years, there's been a proliferation of heart rate monitors, GPS, NFC, pollution sensors, you name it. There's sensors that are getting everywhere in our cars, our houses, our bodies. We knew that Pebble, as a company as well as a product, couldn't do it all. It's almost impossible for us to say that we wanted to include every single sensor inside this tiny little thing on your wrist. And we also knew that we weren't experts at it. Like, our core competency right now is making smartwatches and making a really good platform for developers to build on top of. And with that, we said, well, what if we just added a serial port to the watch and enabled developers to attach sensors and other devices to Pebble. We've always been planning to do this via PLE and enabling Pebble to talk directly to other Bluetooth devices, which is in the works. We have a beta. If anyone wants to try it out, just send Thomas an email. But on the hardware side, it gets complicated if you have to constantly charge a whole bunch of different devices, if you have to remember to charge your sensors. And then we thought, well, what if there was just the idea of a smart strap? What if you could have a strap that would connect directly to the watch, get powered by the watch, and just add a particular sensor that the strap was really good at, like a heart rate sensor, a GPS sensor, or an NFC or an extended battery. That's where things got really interesting. We decided to reuse the charge connector on the bottom of Pebble Time and add the ability to connect via serial. We've got a lot more information coming about this over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be ridiculously cool when it comes out, because I know that I'm interested in hacking on it. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be connecting it to Arduinos, to sensors, to LEDs, to all kinds of stuff. What are you thinking about?
GSR heart rate.
Heart rate, yeah. GSR? Oh, interesting. So like to detect stress levels or that kind of around. Oh, that's important. Is Pebble user alive? Okay. And that's kind of exactly it. I don't think I would have thought of that. Other questions, thoughts?
So the strap for the first round was proprietary, meaning you couldn't get like a strap in the jewelry store.
For the second one, for the Pebble Steel. The original Pebble had a standard.
Oh, okay, sorry, I haven't.
It's okay.
So is that, what's the story with
So we're back to a standard 22mm watch strap with Pebble Time. Felt like it was the right thing to do. You can see it there. On top of that, we actually added a quick release mechanism, so that instead of having to grind your fingernails down just to be able to take the strap off the watch, you can quickly, anyone who has a Pebble Time can show you, you can pop the strap off in about 5 to 10 seconds. This was critical for our smart strap strategy as well, so that you can imagine a running strap that had galvanic skin response, blood pressure, or heart rate, and GPS being swappable with a leather band that you take out, after the run. But yeah, it was incredibly important. Pebble Steel, I think, had a certain style, has a certain style to it. Yeah, we're pretty happy to get back to the 22mm strap. Yes?
Are you planning, or is there already a Find My Watch? So either if you lose your watch, you can find it, or if the person wearing it is lost, you can find the person.
Interesting, a Find My Watch feature. Generally, my watch is usually about a maximum of 1.5 feet away from me, but I understand what you mean. So we haven't done that. I know that it's possible that if you lose your watch, you could send notifications to it and try to hear the buzzing around you. But we haven't. I think one of the things that Pebble doesn't have that would probably help with that feature a lot is a radio, so that it could be connected while it's outside of Bluetooth range. So there's no way for you to do that. So for example, I think you're talking about like a Find My Child or Find My Friend. If they also had their smartphone on them, I believe it would be possible for someone to write an app that could use the JS kit on the phone to detect the geolocation and transmit it back to your Pebble. Yeah, that sounds pretty feasible.
Yeah. I think it could be pretty useful.
Yeah, definitely.
Alzheimer's people, people that have been kidnapped, kids that are lost.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll have to talk more.
Can you pair multiple Pebbles to a single device?
You can pair multiple Pebbles to a single phone, but you can only connect to one Pebble at a given time. I know that some hackers have created many other ways to do this. In fact, if you have a laptop, you can use libpebble right now to connect to more than one Pebble. I know that one developer has been creating a kickboxing setup that will vibrate with the limb that you have to use, and he's using a laptop to connect to 4 Pebbles, including a Pebble with an extra large strap around his ankle. But no, you can't do it from a phone right now. Yes.
Does Pebble provide power to the smart straps?
We will, yes. We will provide power to the smart straps. Don't remember how many small amount of power, like very, very, very tiny.
And
The smart strap can also provide power to Pebble. So
yes.
You can also have a battery smart straps that would give a month-long battery life.
2 questions. You can send voice messages. Is there speakers so you can hear messages?
Oh, sorry, just getting one from here. I'll repeat it and then grab you, sorry.
And then the second question was...
Gotta get the first one, sorry.
If you have, there's a microphone, so you can send messages. Is there some way to hear messages like a speaker?
There's no speaker on Pebble Time, and we decided to do this we decided not to include a speaker for a number of reasons. One was it was hard enough getting a microphone to be waterproof and stuck onto the watch. A speaker would be a little bit more added complexity. It's possible that we'll look into it in the future, but for now it's not there. I think one thing that you can do is consider using the phone as part of the system. So if the user has their phone in their pocket, it's sometimes possible that you can actually hear it. It's not very private, but you can get a little bit of audio through it.
And the second one was for backward compatibility of watches that don't do pins, how do you access these? Because that sort of wasn't addressed at all. Like you push the center button and you can see stuff now.
Yeah, so for the Pebble and the Pebble Still will keep their existing operating system for a few more weeks, and we have announced that we will make the new Pebble OS available for those watches as well, and so they will get pins as well.
Right, but if you don't update your app to add in support for pins, you still want to be able to use the internet access.
Oh yeah, okay, I get you. So we said that on your watch face, you press the up button, you go in the past, you press the down button, you go in the future. We haven't talked about the select button, the middle button. So when you press the select button, you actually go into a list of apps, just like you did before, which uses app faces, which was shown in the Kickstarter video, where you can see preview of the apps, and you can also go into your settings. So that will be how you can still launch existing apps.
It's a, sorry, in the back?
Yeah, so would it be envisioned for us to test holograms on real hardware prior to today?
Yeah, I think we've hacked together a little solution for how you can do that.
So that's a great question, because of course the colors look different on the screen of your computer than they will look on the screen of the Pebble. So to work around that, we're taking pictures of a lot of apps that are running in color on the real Pebble and putting them on the website so you can compare what those apps look like on a screenshot and in real life. So that will give you a first ID. and we're going to start a program. Send us your PBW, we'll take pictures of your app. So if we have too much success, we might have to stop somewhere along the way, or if we really have a lot of success, we might get someone to actually write a little robot, and we'll have a guy with an arm outside the office and a webcam pointed at him.
Yeah, what if we, I'm just making more work, Catherine. What if we integrated into Cloud Pebble, and so if you, instead of targeting the emulator, you could target like Thomas Pebble. But again, I'm just making more work for that. It's very easy for me to say this. One last question back there.
Have you thought about integrating the watch with like current existing analog technology or like replace analog technology?
Have we thought about integrating Pebble technology with an analog watch? Yeah, it's an interesting idea. We've been thinking about this. We've been mainly focused on what we're doing today, building digital watches that enable a little bit more of a user interaction. But it's an interesting idea. It'd be cool to hear what you think. I grew up. I used to have an AnaDigi watch, like one of those analog watches with that digital display. In fact, the very first smartwatch that I can remember is a Sony Ericsson MBW watch that had a 10 character display for showing the incoming phone number. It's interesting, yeah.
I think we're going to try to cut Q&A now, give you some time to talk about your ideas for Pebble Time. So if you guys want to maybe start forming a line on the side over there, we have more space. And then we'll do 30 seconds per person talking about your ideas for Pebble Time.
Thanks, Eric.
Come on, guys. I know you have ideas.